This is a special episode of the podcast for a couple of reasons. One, I am solo right now. Matt, in fact, doesn't even know that I am recording this right now. This is a secret and will be a surprise when it comes out, which is the other part of this special episode. It's coming out on a Thursday, specifically on Thanksgiving. And this is a very short episode, which you've probably already noticed, because I probably can't carry a full 1 hour podcast by myself. And also, we release full episodes on Mondays. This is more of a supplemental episode. And the reason why I'm doing this is because of the day. It's Thanksgiving, and we're not going to get into, anything about the holiday itself, but I think it's universally accepted that on Thanksgiving and around Thanksgiving, we all sort of take a moment to reflect on the things in life that we have that we are thankful for. So I thought it would be nice to do that for the podcast. And I'm going to talk a little bit about things that I am thankful for in the hobby, the comic book world. And to start that off, it's with a lot of series that have been very important to me throughout my life. Things that were impactful or that I really had a strong connection to because of a character or a story, or it was just something that was really important to the industry, like a comic like Saga and Invincible, my favorite comic. I'm very thankful that that comic exists, that Robert Kirkman doesn't just write horror and zombie comics, that he took the time to write the best superhero comic ever. That's not hyperbole, that is a fact. Ghost Rider, Captain Marvel, X-Men in the 90s in general, all the stuff with the mutants really in the 90s. So much great, amazing Spider-Man content that came out, when the Image guys were still employed at Marvel, and then through, a few months ago when I stopped reading it. I've loved Amazing Spider-Man for a very long time. So thankful that character exists because Peter Parker is such a relatable guy for your average person like me. Thinking about independent comics like Valiant in the 90s, Judge Dredd's one of my favorite all-time characters. There's been some, good and bad Judge Dredd movies that have existed, which I believe we are at the 10th anniversary of the most recent Judge Dredd film, which is fun because that's the best one and my favorite. On top of that, I think just, we've talked on the podcast before, Matt and I both, about, the community of the hobby and how important the local comic shop is. And I'm so thankful that in my hometown there was a local shop. Again, shout out Books Galore in Erie, Pennsylvania, but there was a local shop filled with so many fantastic people that were warm and welcoming, and that, made me feel like I was a part of something, and that the hobby was more than just, me reading comic books in my room as a kid. There are a lot more things involved in comic books than I was aware of as a young man getting into comics for the first time. But the thing that I really wanted to talk about, and especially as it relates to this podcast, one of the things that I am most thankful for is my friend Matt, and the friendship that we have had now for going on 18 years, I think. If it wasn't for Matt, this podcast wouldn't exist, because he and I, we've had so many silly and interesting and fun conversations about comics over the years, just amongst he and I, private conversations. And if he wasn't in my life in a meaningful way, we never would have had the idea to create a podcast and talk about comics. And I don't care how many listeners or viewers that we have, we do this for us, and we think that it's a fun and worthwhile experience for us. Again, it's just, we do this for us. So Matt, thank you for coming along on this podcast journey with me and for being my best friend. We have so many fantastic memories together. I couldn't imagine doing a podcast with anybody else, especially about comics, than you. That being said, I do want to share a few fun memories, especially one as it relates to this specific holiday. But we've talked about it before. Matt has come to visit me a bunch of times. I've moved all over the place for work before finally landing in Texas. We met when I lived in Pennsylvania, and he was there for school. He came to visit me in Ohio. We would drive around to comic shops almost every day that he was there and hunt for back issues and trades and whatever. He came to visit me in New York. Same thing. We'd play video games and we'd go to comic book shops. One of the times he came to visit me when I lived in Syracuse, we actually drove to New York City to go to New York Comic Con with our friend Paul, which is one of my favorite memories, period. That was a life experience that will stick with me forever. That is a core memory, both with my friendships with Matt and Paul and in experiencing the hobby and going to a con of that size. Absolutely phenomenal memory and phenomenal experience. A long time ago, when I still lived in Pennsylvania, Matt was not going to go home for Thanksgiving. And he came over to my mom's house for Thanksgiving. He spent Thanksgiving with me. And we also, side note, we worked together at a large video game retailer, and we both had to go in and open the store at midnight that night and work. So we ended up hanging out all day on Thanksgiving and then went to work together after that. But in between dinner and opening the store and working, Matt was in a bad way, because I'll never forget, at dinner, this man loaded up his plate so full of food. I looked at it and I said, there's no way you're ever going to eat all that. And in true Matt fashion, he proved me wrong, much to his own detriment. He had the meat sweats and was like a beached whale laying on my living room floor for hours before we had to go into work. We still talk about the meat sweats to this day. It all started, probably 16 years ago on Thanksgiving Day. So I thought I'd share a little embarrassing story with our small little community here on the podcast. The last couple of things that I have to say before I wrap up this very, very short episode. Number one, I know damn well you saw those locusts on your screen, Matt. I know you did. You can fool everybody but me. I know you saw them. They were there. And number two, and this is for everybody, but especially for Matt, don't ever forget that it was me. I ordered the cornbread.